and welcome to the Tough Cover Podcast with your host, Mark Henry Jr. Welcome to episode 20 of the Tough Cover Podcast on the Painted Lines. Please go follow at the Painted Lines on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube and Twitch. And follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _ and follow the podcast at Tough Cover Pod on Twitter. On today's show, we have a very special guest who was the very first guest on my very first podcast way back in the day when I was on my own. Alex Carr from the Good Fight. Alex, thanks for coming on. How you doing?
Dude, that intro is heat. Did you make that?
No, the good people at the Painted Lines.
Oh, dude, I wish everybody could see me. I was grooving. I'm doing good, man. Glad to be back. Glad to be in the company of such good people. Very, very psyched to be here, and thank you to you for inviting me. I appreciate it endlessly.
Of course. We're happy to have you on. We're absolutely excited, especially getting so close to opening day. We're less than a week away. I don't know the exact, what is it, 5 days?
It's 6 days. 6 days. Not that I'm counting or anything.
Yeah.
6 days.
We are excited, folks, and that is why me and my buddy Alex are going to break down the Phillies for the 2021 season. But before we get to all of that, we have a quick word from the Painted Lines sponsors.
Hey, what's up, guys? March Madness is here. The NBA and NHL are both in full swing. Baseball opening day is coming up, while we here at the Painted Lines are devoted to bringing you top-notch content from all the major sports. We are excited to also now give you the opportunity to cash in on all that content and knowledge. If you follow the link below, you will have the opportunity to sign up with BetRivers, an online sportsbook, and get an instant new user deposit match of up to $250. That's free money that you can use and try to turn into more free money. Let's go. Don't sit there and waste all that money. Turn every basket into an otherwise meaningless Cavs-Timberwolves matchup on a random Wednesday in March. That makes it all the more exciting. For betting tips and advice, be sure to check out written content from our top prognosticator, Money Max, on our website at thepaintedlines.com, or check out the Tough Cover Podcast right here on the Painted Lines YouTube channel. You've seen the commercials all over TV and radio, but now is the time. Sign up today with BetRivers using the link below and start cashing in on your love for sports. Using the link below will automatically inform BetRivers that TPL sent you, and you'll get that new user deposit match of up to $250. Don't miss out on this opportunity for some free money, baby.
Go and check that out, and it will let them know for what you guys are here for. Let's talk fightins'. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Phillies. Last year, I had Alex on, like I said, right before the season. It was a little bit different time of the year because we were getting started a little later in the year last year due to COVID. But the first question I asked you last year was about who the X factor was for the season, and we both agreed that it was Rhys Hoskins last year. I kind of come into this year thinking the same thing. Do you feel the same way that Rhys is the X factor in the lineup this year? And what does a successful Rhys Hoskins season look like to you?
Definitely. I think even more so this year than last year. We saw an X Factor season kind of from Rhys Hoskins last year, and had it not been for the late season injury, I think we would have really, the Phillies just needed one more win to clinch a playoff spot. Now, of course, they didn't do that, which was unfortunate. But even so, we saw what a healthy Rhys Hoskins brings to this lineup. And so I think another year of a healthy Rhys Hoskins would be absolutely huge. And as far as the season goes, I mean, when you look at Rhys, he's not one of those guys that you're expecting a high average from, right? You're not that average matters anyway these days, but you're not expecting a 300 plus average from this guy. What you are expecting is maybe somewhere hitting around 240, but with a very high on base percentage. So you're talking like 380 to 400 plus. In terms of on base, and then a 500 plus slugging, because he is a power hitter after all. So his job is not only to get on base, but it is to hit a few home runs along the way. So I think that honestly, a successful Rhys season looks exactly like that. 240, 380, 500, somewhere around 25 to 30 home runs. And as long as he can do that, I mean, that's massive. That is absolutely massive for this team.
Yeah, that's right around what he was on pace to do last year. The percentages were really similar. So obviously a shortened season, so you can hope that he can sustain that over a long period of time, because we obviously have seen Reese have flashes of brilliance over 2 or 3 week spans, and then 2 or 3 week spans where you'd rather see anyone else step up to the plate in a big moment than him. But I mean, that's how it's going to be when you're not Bryce Harper, you're not JT Realmuto. So when you need that third guy to step up and be that wherever he is, three through five in the lineup, and hopefully be that way consistently. And that I really do think that's the X factor for the lineup. But more importantly than that, we can't go too long without talking about the bullpen. Obviously, the story of last season. What are your expectations for the bullpen this season? And do you think they did enough in the offseason to address what we'll call a problem from last year's bullpen?
More than a problem, to be sure. But I think it's important to look at. So today being, what is it? The 26th. Today, the 26th, the Phillies made a lot of roster decisions. Namely, the big ones being Tony Watson was released. That's a big deal, because Tony Watson is a guy, over the last few years has been one of the best relievers in the sport. Well, I wouldn't say one of the best, but he's been one of the most consistent relievers in the sport. And you're looking at a guy with a sub-3 career ERA. He's very, very good out of the bullpen, very effective from the left side. Didn't make the team. That's got to mean something for this Phillies bullpen. And it's not because, they're trying to save money. No, it's because he didn't make it. He didn't make the cut. Now, that in mind, they added Brandon Kinsler, who was absolutely outstanding in 2020. And on top of that, Spencer Howard was also demoted to the minor leagues. The Phillies' top prospect was demoted to the minor leagues. And that's not really a surprise, but it is a surprise because, the bullpen could have used him for sure. I do think that's a bit of a waste of his talent, but it would have been better than, most of the guys that they had on the roster last year. So, you got to think that there's at least a couple of decent guys coming out of that bullpen this year, and that there are. You're looking at, a totally revamped bullpen, not only because of additions that they made in the offseason, but subtractions they made as well. Tommy Hunter was just released by the Mets, but he's a longtime veteran, I guess, of this Phillies bullpen. Didn't make the cut for them, but he's not on this club anymore. Guys like Brandon Workman, Heath Hembry, Heath Hembry was also released by his previous club, being the Indians. Now he just was picked up by the White Sox, I think. I don't really know. I could care less. Brandon Workman, got a $1 million deal for 1 year with the Cubs. I mean, all these guys have now gone away. These guys that were absolutely deplorable for the Phillies last year. And now you've got, Jose Alvarado, Archie Bradley, Brandon Kinsler, as I mentioned before, Sam Coonrod, who had an amazing spring. Already 4 guys that could probably come out of the bullpen and be, pretty effective at the very least. In Jose Alvarado and Archie Bradley's case, 2 brand new back-end bullpen additions that the Phillies did not have before this year that have had pretty great springs. And on top of that, you've got Connor Brogdon looking to build off an absolutely outstanding 2020 season. Jojo Romero has sustained his velocity bump. That's a big deal for this bullpen. And with Tony Watson gone, he's probably making the opening day roster too. So you're looking at a bullpen that I think the only lasting members of last year's full-length bullpen are Hector Neris, and I think that's it. Connor Brogdon came up midseason. Jojo Romero came up midseason. I think that's pretty much it, unless I'm forgetting somebody. But I mean, you're looking at a completely revamped bullpen. Now, am I expecting this bullpen to be a top one in the major leagues? No, I am not. And that is partly because I'm so bogged down from last year's bullpen. I just don't see, how it could get any worse. But, it doesn't leave somebody overly optimistic. That being said, I do think that it will be a very middle of the pack, very, solid bullpen that will carry at least it won't blow them, 40 games, this next season. It will blow them, an amount that is yet to be determined, but not as many as last year. That is for certain. So I'm very, very excited to see what this reformed pen can do, especially on the backs of so many high velocity relievers. We look at last year's bullpen and we see maybe one guy that throws upwards of 95. You look at this year's, you've got at least 5. So that's pretty great. That's very exciting. At least, you're looking at this this new regime for the Phillies, and you see some immediate differences, and namely the velocity is definitely one of them. So that's really exciting as well.
Yeah, so sticking with the bullpen, and I agree with something you said in there. I don't expect it to be one of the best bullpens. It just has to be in the middle. It just has to be below average. It just can't be terrible. So in terms of the bullpen, what do you expect as far as closing? I'm in a fantasy baseball league. I'm doing my research each year. More and more, there's more teams going closer by committee. Is that what you're expecting here, or do you think Girardi ends up sticking with Neris, or it plays situationally, or what are you expecting there?
Shockingly, Girardi has expressed most interest in assigning a closer. So I think personally, I think it's Hector Neris' job to lose. But if he does end up losing it, I would probably see Archie Bradley stepping in. If not Archie Bradley, Jose Alvarado, and if not Jose Alvarado, maybe Brandon Kinsler. I mean, Brandon Kinsler was, I think he led the National League in saves last year for the Marlins, which is what? Like, that's a guy that you gave a minor league contract. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, Brandon Kinsler's peripherals are totally sustainable. They are totally not. He gets hit pretty hard sometimes, and when he does, the ball flies. But looking at that guy and not pointing to him and saying, hey, that's our closer, which is what the Phillies would have done in, years past, where they would have been like, this guy who was really good last year but throws 90 miles an hour, he's our closer now. They're not doing that anymore. They've got a whole plethora of options. And if that doesn't work, Connor Brogdon is also an option, which is huge. This kid who came out of, not nowhere, he was very high on my radar personally, but, came out of the woodwork in 2020 and absolutely dominated in the latter half of the season. And, even if Connor doesn't work, you have to look at Seranthony Dominguez also coming back. June or July is set for his return date. Hopefully, if all goes well, that's obviously very optimistic that he'll come back and be anywhere near as effective as he used to be after not pitching in 3 years. But, stranger things have happened, and it would be an incredible, incredible comeback story. So that's another guy to look out for. Either way, I mean, whatever they decide, it will be cemented by, a certain week within the season. And I imagine that no matter who they choose, that person is probably going to be the long-term option until they, otherwise prove that they can't handle it. So I'm very excited to see where they go. My current gut feeling is Hector Neris, especially with a new slider apparently. But that's my current gut feeling. After that, I'd go Archie Bradley, then Jose Alvarado, then Brandon Kinsler, then Connor Brogdon.
Yeah, it's nice to have all those options. And like
Seriously.
you said about, it is. Like you said about Connor Brogdon being on your radar, if there's anything that the TPL crowd should know about Alex, is that he's a huge lover of prospects. It's even in his Twitter bio. Alec Bohm was the exciting prospect last year, and now as an opening day starter is extremely exciting going into this year, in my opinion. So what are your expectations for him? Do you expect more of the same or maybe some improvement? What would be a successful Alec Bohm season?
Look, the Phillies have not had a prospect win in a long, long time. And let me tell you that the rise of Alec Bohm, not only, as Mark mentioned, I'm somebody who really likes prospects. Alec Bohm not only surprised me with his bat, he surprised me with his glove, he surprised me with his, his headstrong, very, competent approach at the plate, which is just very unusual from a young kid, to come up and especially one that relies on making contact as much as Alec does, coming up and absolutely just barreling everything. I mean, he nailed it last season. You can't make much of a better first impression than he did last year. So I'm very, very excited to see what Alec can do. My prediction for him this year, and a successful season from Alec is infinity and beyond. What we saw from him last year was, if we can get something like that again, I mean, that's insane, especially over a full 162 games. But my prediction for Alec, I think what he's going to be looking at this year, I'm not super high on the glove still. He has limited range. He's a very large human being. Not that he's a bad athlete. He's actually an exceptional athlete. He's just very big. And that's, it's tough to get down to all of those balls that are going to be on the ground over at the hot corner when you're as tall and large as he is, but, has a super strong arm, very, very athletic for his size. So, if all doesn't work out at third base, maybe we see him in left field at some point. And it's, who knows? Who's to say? But that is the worst case scenario. My prediction for him, we're going to see the average drop a little bit. He's not going to be hitting 337 his entire career. That is not sustainable. I apologize. But probably somewhere in the 280, 290 range, I would think. But I do think we're going to see an uptick in power. That is for sure. I think somewhere from 20 to 25 home runs for him this year is easily achievable, if not more. Because we saw some devastating raw power from him last year. And what you have to remember about Alec is that he still has, he kind of jumped from AA to a little bit of the alternate site to the majors. I mean, he didn't even get a taste of AAA. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see how he, follows up a really successful freshman campaign. But man, I think if right now, the fact that I think that Alec Bohm is the guy that I want at the plate with a runner in scoring position is mind-boggling to me. I did not think that was where I would be in 2021. I thought, I'd be impressed with Alec. He'd be hitting at the bottom of the lineup maybe. That dude is smack dab in the middle, probably slated to hit fourth this year, which is crazy for, a Rookie of the Year contender, a Phillies prospect, to be succeeding at this rate. It's crazy. So I'm very, very excited. And so, I think what you should expect, like I said, a little less average, a little more power. But man, that kid is dangerous with runners in scoring position, as is, Didi Gregorius too. I mean, they have a couple of guys that are real on base threats. We've seen it this spring. We saw it last year. Didi Gregorius knows how to drive a run home too. So, I mean, I don't know. This lineup's going to be doing some damage. I don't know.
Yeah, I was pitching the other day. Maybe I think Bohm with this 2 spot could be something that could be interesting down the line. Because I know that people were arguing about who to put there, and I didn't see many people putting Bohm in the 2 spot. I'm going to put a couple of these comments. Just people saying, "What's up? What's up, man? What's up, Shane?
Cheese beef from my stream. What's good, man?"
Oh yeah. So yeah, everyone, drop your questions for Alex in the comments if you have anything about the Phillies. If you have anything about the Phillies or baseball in general, just drop them in the comments. Do I have some NBA picks? I don't today, but I have an announcement for that for tomorrow. I would say, going back to what we were talking about, Alec Bohm, he was the prospect that was hot on Phillies Twitter last year, I'd say. I don't think there's a prospect hotter on Phillies Twitter this spring than former #1 overall pick Mickey Moniak, which leads me to ask this. Who do you think will be in center field for the playoff push post-deadline? Will it be someone from another team? Will it be Moniak, Odubel? What are your thoughts?
That is a very well-structured question, Mr. Mark. I think, personally, I'm going to go with Adam Hazley. I think that Adam Hazley is going to hit his way into starting regularly in center field. Now, I don't know if the glove is going to hold up. I really don't know. Adam Hazley is not the fastest human being on the planet, so he's not your typical, kind of lankier outfielder or center field type. He's not the fastest, but he is very athletic. And he's very coordinated. So he knows, and he's very smart. He's very intelligent when it comes to defending. I mean, he is a brilliant left field defender. So, I mean, there's going to be some growing pains. It's going to be hard. He's going to misplay some balls. He did last year, but not nearly as bad as Roman Quinn will. So, it's going to be a growing process, but I think he is going to hit his way into a starting center field job. I really do. I think, one of the more mature hitters on the team, and he's, only 24. Adam is just absolutely, he puts up a quality at bat every single go around in the dish. He comes to fight. He always seems to work himself into a full count. He can, slap the ball the other way. He can swat it to pull side for some power. He always seems to find the gaps. So, I mean, Adam is a very well-disciplined, mature hitter for his age. And I really do think that he is going to find his way to starting in center field. Now, if Roman Quinn, keeps choking up on the bat a little bit, continues to put up some okay plate appearances, he's definitely going to get a few starts every now and again. I think it's going to be more of a platoon for the whole year than it is going to be a direct person starting. So I think Roman Quinn will probably get the bulk of the at-bats against left-handed pitching because he is better from the right side than he is on the left. And then I think Adam is probably going to get the bulk of the starts against right-handed pitching, and they'll switch mid-game. They'll do, a whole bunch of things. It's going to be a lot of double switches, especially with pitchers still hitting in the National League, which is ludicrous. It's going to be a lot of double switches, a lot of really interesting configurations, but I do think that Adam Hazley will be the bulk starting center fielder, is my prediction. Now we'll see. I don't know.
Someone you didn't mention there is Odubel Herrera. I'm just curious where you're at on Odubel Herrera.
Odubel Herrera is hitting sub 220 now with a sub 650 OPS on the spring. So all I'm going to say is even when he was hitting well, he was swinging at garbage, as he always tended to do in the majors. He was bad before any incidents, before any issues popped up. He had a horrible year and a half before, getting slapped with a 60-game ban. He came back and he leads the Phillies with, 3 home runs this spring, but all of them have come at, I think, 102 miles an hour of exit velocity or lower, which is not very hard hit. And they've all been relatively short except for maybe one. So I don't think we've really seen anything that impressive from him this spring. We certainly haven't seen a lot of a capacity to go for extra bases outside of home runs. His OPS is pitiful. His average has been very bad. He's not getting on base a lot. I'm not sold, combined with the fact that I don't think he should be getting the opportunity. But that's just a personal opinion. There are a lot of people out there who disagree with me, and I respect your opinions, contrary to what you may believe. I do respect that opinion that, you believe that Odubel deserves a second chance, what have you. I understand where you're coming from. I don't personally believe that, but you do you. I just don't think he has done nearly enough this spring to show us that he is anywhere better than he was before he was banned from baseball 2 years ago. So that's just my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, definitely, on the issue of if he deserves to be here or not. And I'm also in the same boat. I don't think he's the best option necessarily, but I do think that the Phillies kept him around this long because they at least viewed him as an option, maybe not the best option, but in case there's injuries or something like that. I'm surprised that the Phillies kept him around, so I have to imagine that there was a purpose to that.
I mean, it's a lot of posturing. That is something that has to be said. They have to give him an opportunity because otherwise he has the opportunity to file a grievance against them in the future, which they don't want. So they gave him every opportunity to prove himself. If you look at the spring numbers, if you look at the at-bats, I mean, he was obviously not very good. So they have every right now to demote him or to outright him, to release him. They could do that as well. I doubt that happens. I think that they just let him meander in AAA. And then when his contract expires next year, they will go ahead and, make do with that what they will. I will say the added benefit to releasing him, I believe then they don't have to even worry about his team option that would come through next year. I don't even think that makes its way onto the books because they released him. So we'll see. I honestly have no idea what their plan is with him, but I can't wait to watch it unfold regardless.
Yeah. One more question regarding prospects. Besides Bohm, Howard, Moniak, will there be anyone in the farm system who is not being talked about who will be impactful this season for the Phillies?
This season, it's tough to say, but I mean, you got to keep your eyes on some of these guys. Adonis Medina still exists. He's still a guy, a former top 100 prospect, could very well see a velocity bump this year, given, who he'll be working with. The Phillies have a whole bunch of new guys in the stable that are doing an absolutely incredible job. Shout out to you guys. If you're watching, you know who you are. There are just some guys that have been doing wonders for a lot of these Phillies prospects. And, Adonis Medina still exists. He's still out there. He's a depth starter that totally could come up and make some waves. He had a pretty decent start against the Blue Jays last year. Obviously didn't go the length that you would want from a starter, but it wasn't bad at all. He only allowed 2 runs, I believe. On top of that, you've got guys like Ranger Suarez. They're still there. You've got a couple of really interesting bullpen candidates. Zach Warren, a lefty that, was almost picked in the Rule 5 draft this year. You've got, just a couple guys that are down there. Kyle Doey, an absolutely brutal left-hander that, if he can somewhat hone in on his command, could also make a huge impact further down along the way if he has a good AAA season. Same with Damon Jones, a guy that's slated for a starting role right now, but transitioning to the bullpen, he would see a huge uptick in stuff. So, there's quite a few guys. It's going to be a really awesome AAA team. You've got Mickey Moniak. Derek Hall has put on an absolute show this spring with, major exit velocities of he's got like 10 balls he's hit harder than 108 miles an hour, topping out at like 112. I mean, he is blistering the baseball. So you've got him down there. You've got Austin Listy, who's been down there for a minute. Could be a bench candidate further on down the way. CJ Chatham, Nick Maton, guys that we saw in spring this year. Ranger Suarez, again, Adonis Medina, Damon Jones, all these guys that are just, they're close to the majors now, and they could make an impact, especially with a solid AAA season. Very exciting team that Lehigh Valley has brewing, and thankfully there will be a minor league season to showcase them.
Yeah, that is great. Going away from prospects, my favorite under the radar signing this offseason was Chase Anderson. I think there's a chance that he could step up and be a solid number 3 or number 4 in our rotation. I know he was bad last year, but he was really solid for a good stretch of years in Milwaukee. And even if you look back at his Arizona years, they were honestly decent. Do you think my optimism is warranted at all? And do you have any level of confidence that he can get back to his Milwaukee, Arizona days?
Hey, look, any level of optimism is warranted, Mark. You are allowed to be optimistic. I don't think enough Philly fans understand that you're allowed to be, a little bit positive about this team. Anyway, Chase Anderson has looked really good this spring. Really, really good. And it's not just, the numbers. The numbers look okay. But just by our eyes, fans, we look, we watch. We see the movement that he's getting on his pitches. We see, the fact that he is utilizing his pitches well. He's commanding them well, not walking a lot of guys, really getting some whiffs on some of this stuff. And yes, it's spring, and yes, it's early, and yes, sometimes he's facing, some minor league guys, but he's looked pretty darn good. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, he's going to be an ace. He's going to develop into this big unknown quantity. But what he is going to be is probably a solid number 5 starter, which is what they signed him to be. I mean, he's on a $4 million contract. That's a starting pitcher that, you're netting on $4 million. That's a pretty good deal regardless of who you're signing. So I'm honestly very, very excited for him. And I think your optimism is warranted. I mean, yes, he had a bit of an outlier 2020 season, but I mean, you look back at his, I think it's like 2014 through 2019. The guy pitched like 150 plus innings of, slightly above 4 ERA ball, and, had some decent peripherals along the way. This is not some guy that is just like, some veteran that gets shelled all the time. Like, I don't know, Jake Arrieta maybe. This is a guy that, has some upside. There's some upside here, and there's some upside in his counterpart, Matt Moore, as well. A guy that's had a really, really good season in Japan, that's now coming back over with, some refined mechanics, touching 95 on the fastball. Chase Anderson touching 95 on his fastball as well. Both of these guys, yes, they're a little bit, unknown, but there's upside there. There's reason to believe that these guys will far exceed the contracts that they've been given. And if they don't, well, guess what? The Phillies had a top 10 rotation in baseball last year by the numbers, with, a rotation of Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler, Zach Eflin, Vince Velasquez, and Spencer Howard down the stretch. Well, they still have those last 2 guys waiting around. Vince is probably going to be in the bullpen, and Spencer is going to be in the minors. Worst comes to worst, where do you turn but to those 2 guys who, comprised the back end of a top 10 rotation last year? So, I mean, regardless of how Chase Anderson and Matt Moore perform, they could just bump to the bullpen for all we know, and the Phillies still have a good shot at having a really decent rotation. But I do think your Chase Anderson optimism is warranted, in short, because he's looked really, really good.
Yeah, I guess I felt like more people were excited by the Matt Moore signing. And I felt like the Chase Anderson one went a little under the radar. So I just guess I have a little more confidence in Chase Anderson. But the thing that does give you confidence in Matt Moore is someone like a couple of years ago with Miles Mikolas. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. But
Michaelis.
Miles Mikolas. from St. Louis. His first year back, I think he went like 18-4. He was fantastic. So you just hope that Matt Moore, like you said, the refined. I just think that there is a chance that he has that kind of resurgent season. He was a pretty good pitcher at one time in the MLB.
I mean, who could forget when he was ranked above Mike Trout in prospect rankings? I mean, we could get there. I mean, he's not going to get there. But what he is going to be is a left-handed starter for the first time in like
I saw the stats somewhere.
8 years. I mean, it's a long time coming. So, I mean, at least he adds some variance to the rotation. At worst, he can, transfer to the bullpen where, he totally could see an uptick in stuff, some upticks in velocity. Chase Anderson has even said he has no qualms with pitching out of the bullpen too. So, I mean, worst comes to worst, these guys struggle a little bit and then they just serve as, long reliever bullpen depth. And that's, with a combined $7 million invested in them, if they eat innings, that's great. You look at the Braves spending $13 million for 1 year of Drew Smyly, who the Phillies signed to a minor league contract not 2 years ago, a guy that pitched 20 innings last year and I guess has some unforeseen upside because the Braves sure were quick to snap him up for a deal that, my God. But, the Phillies have invested half of that into two pitchers with probably just as much upside, to be completely honest. Don't tell Braves fans, but probably just as much upside. And, you get twice the value, probably twice the innings. And, for half the money. So it's either way you spin it. These are two very decent signings. They're not total needle movers just yet, but we'll see. They could be.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, I wanted to run a couple Phillies lines by you because this usually is a gambling show, but we make exceptions for Philly sports, especially with opening day coming up. I have a couple over-unders for some players and then a couple things to talk about with teams. So with Bryce Harper, the over-under was set that I saw at 36.5 home runs, 105 RBIs, and 100 runs. Where would you fall on those?
Those are some pretty tough stats.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, just for the sake of being a little bit pessimistic, 36.5 home runs is a lot for him. I do think that, you put a left-handed hitter like Bryce Harper in Citizens Bank Park, that dude is going to hit some absolute tanks, and he's going to hit a lot of them. We have yet to see him exceed that 35 number. We have yet to see, at least on the baseball card backs, we've yet to see that MVP Bryce return. But his expected stats from last year were ludicrous. I mean, somebody sent me them the other day. He was slated to hit, had we lived in a perfect world, he was slated to hit 306 with a near mid 400s on base percentage, which he already had, last year anyway. A near mid 400s on base percentage and a 600 plus slugging. I don't know about you, but if we see numbers like that from Bryce Harper, obviously you're going to want to smash the over on that. Right now, I mean, he's had a great spring. I'd be hitting the under on it. I'd be really, really cautious with it. But if he starts out hot, I mean, you can go ahead and feel free to hit the over on it, I suppose, if you're feeling risky. But perennial MVP candidate, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I have something in there about that. But I for the home runs, I'm not as confident on the over. But as in terms of RBIs, over under 105 RBIs.
I would take the over. The over.
He had 114 2 years ago. He would definitely have been on pace to be above that last year.
This team is going to score a lot of runs, and he's going to be a big reason why. So I would smash the over on that. As for runs scored, I would also smash the over on that. Just because I think this is a guy, if he doesn't hit that amount of home runs, he's going to be getting on base a lot. And if he's getting on base a lot, this lineup is super deep. JT Realmuto is like slated to be your 6-hole hitter. Like, that's a pretty darn deep lineup. So if you're going to, if you're going to smash the over on anything, it would probably be the RBIs and the runs scored for sure.
And then, so getting to that guy, by the way, I do want to say last year, one of the first questions I asked Alex was, do we have any reason to worry that JT won't be a Philly in 2021? And he said, everyone relax. He's going to be around. And he was right. So JT is starting.
I did start to regret it a little bit towards the end there, but we did get there. It paid off. It paid off.
Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord. JT Realmuto over under 22.5 home runs, 75.5 RBIs.
If you do not smash the over on both of those things, you don't know what you're doing. Get the JT at the very least is hitting 22 home runs. At the very least. I mean, I have no idea how that is still a line for him right now, especially seeing, he has not lost a step from missing a few weeks of spring training. Not lost a step. The guy is 3 for 4 over 2 games to start his spring, which he's getting started late, but who cares? I mean, the guy knows how to hit. He's the best catcher in baseball for a reason. He's going to hit more home runs than that for sure, and he's going to drive in way more runs than that too, especially if, you've got guys like Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, in this lineup. If Alec Bohm does not drive them in, if Didi Gregorius does not drive them in, JT Realmuto is going to drive them in, and he does struggle. The reason that I'm assuming those lines are so low is because he does struggle a bit with runners in scoring position, but I could care less, to be completely honest. He's going to have more than 75 RBIs. You can be cautious as much as you want with those home run numbers. The RBIs, he's going to have more. He is going to have more as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. And something I wanted to say real quick is the Mets. Everyone thinks the Mets are winning the division. It feels like they're like the favorite. And I
also think that. Yes, I do.
I personally don't. I think the Mets are going to be a little disappointing this year. I actually think Washington is going to be a lot better than people seem to think they're going to be. I'm not saying they're going to win the division. I think Atlanta wins the division. Okay. But Washington, I think Washington's going to be our main competition for the wild card. I actually think the Mets are going to come in fourth. It's a really bold take, I know. But my main thing is I saw a lot of people saying the Mets getting James McCann for what they got him for was better than what the Phillies got JT Realmuto for. And I think that is patently ridiculous. Like, I think that is one of the most ridiculous statements ever. And I think I'm pretty high on James McCann. Like, he's not even like a top 10 fantasy catcher. Like, I get that that's not the bearing of everything, but when you factor in that JT's like one of the best defensive catchers in baseball with the best arm from behind the plate in baseball, it's not. The Mets should have signed JT Realmuto if they had the chance and if they were willing to pony up for catcher.
James McCann is a backup catcher. I don't know what else to say to you. I mean, the sample sizes that we have of his are they're fine. They're okay. They're good. He is not a great defender, nor is he great at the plate. And who knows? Maybe he's more of the 2019 where he had a really great year. Maybe he's more of that guy than he is of last year. He really hasn't gotten the most playing time in the world with the White Sox signing Yasmani Grandal. But that also could work against him. I don't think that's something that some Mets fans understand. There are a lot of Mets fans actually who don't think James McCann is very good, and that I respect. But there are the vast majority of them think he's better than JT Realmuto. I don't think people really take into account that having less playing time can work for you as well as against you, because in those 60 games that you missed, you could strike out 4 times in each of them, and then are you really worth the 4 years, $40 million? So that's the risk that they did take by signing him. Now, I will say, if he just absolutely stinks, for lack of a better word, if he just blows it, that guy's on their payroll for 4 years. 4 years, and their catcher spot is taken for either 4 years or he becomes the backup, in which he's owed what is that, 7 figures, 8 figures, 8 figures across those 4 years. So either way, I mean, look, he's an aging catcher. He really is not very good, in my opinion. So yeah, no, there's no possible way in all of the world that signing him is better than signing JT Realmuto. Cope harder, I guess, is what I'll say to some Mets fans that have been saying that.
Yeah, I don't think Lindor gets them all the way there. I think that there's a lot more you would have had that they had to do. I know that they made other moves.
That's interesting.
I think Carrasco's coming back from an injury. I'm not. I feel like
he just got hurt. Yeah, he actually just got hurt. I think he's getting surgery. I understand what you're saying. I do. And I don't want to harp too much on this because this is it's a Phillies betting show, But I guess this has something to do with it because you're betting on who's going to win the division, blah, blah, blah. And I'm no betting man. I actually don't bet. But were I a betting man, I would look at the Mets rotation, regardless of the health of it, has the opportunity to be insane. I mean, Noah Syndergaard is their fourth or fifth starter. That in and of itself is just kind of ridiculous. It's Jacob deGrom, it's Marcus Stroman, it's they have Joey Lucchesi in the back. Joey Lucchesi, who a lot of people think could be far superior to the numbers that he's put up in the major leagues. They have and that's not to say he's some superstar, but a good 4 or 5 at the very least. But it's Noah Syndergaard, it's Taijuan Walker, who they jumped in and signed to honestly what I think to be a pretty good deal. At the end of free agency, it's a very deep rotation. And of course Carlos Carrasco as well. It's a very deep rotation that I also think even though they're not going to be able to maintain it past this year because Stroman hits free agency, Syndergaard hits free agency. DeGrom, his extension is coming to an end soon, and he's the best pitcher in baseball at 35 years old. So it is a little bit hard to compare that rotation to what the Phillies have right now. However, what they have managed to squander, which could greatly affect their rotation, is their defense. Their defense looks deplorable. It looks absolutely terrible. So we'll see how that affects them. When I say that, I mean like the only good defender on their entire team is Francisco Lindor, and he is an elite defender. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, wow, it looks bad. So we will see what happens with the Mets. I could see them definitely falling apart, especially should a few key players not perform the way they want them to, or should some injuries take some guys down. But that can also happen to any team. On paper, the Mets, to me, look like the team that will win the division. But the Phillies, it could surprise us all.
Yeah. My guy dives from the painted lines here, so cannot wait for next week. Let's go Phils, baby.
Let's go Phils, baby. Let's go.
We can't wait either. So let's right before we get out of here, let's run down the Phillies odds here. The NL East plus 875. It means if you bet $10, you win $87 plus, or $87.50 to be exact, on the Phillies to win the NL East. So they are the 4th place in terms of favorites where they have them. They have the Mets first, the Braves second, the Nats third, and the Phillies 4th. And then to win the NL plus 1,800, to win the World Series plus 3,600. They usually just times it by 2. And then the over-under, I guess, before we get to the over-under, to make the playoffs is the big question. We haven't had it in it's 11 years or 10 years with the second longest drought in the MLB, the longest drought in the National League. It's plus 200. You can double your money to bet on the Phillies to make the playoffs. Do you think the Phillies get it done and end the drought, and we're celebrating at Citizens Bank Park in October?
I think that there are many ways. The fact that there are quite a few ways that I can think of them reaching the playoffs means that, it's not just it's not a foregone conclusion, right? It's not this thing that I'm like, oh yeah, it's definitely going to happen. Like they have a clear shot. But there are multiple ways that I could see them definitely making their way to the playoffs this year. Whether that's winning a wild card spot, whether that's winning the division, whether that's, it coming down to the absolute wire between the Mets, Braves, and Phillies, which honestly, it really might. There are a lot of factors that go into it. But ultimately, for me, I do think that the Phillies will make the playoffs, and I think they will do it via a wild card spot. I have to ask, is that included within the?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they make a wild card spot, you get the money. Okay.
Yes.
So yes, I do think that is going to happen. Whether that mean that they beat the Braves in the standings, whether that mean they beat the Mets in the standings, whether that mean that they beat both of them, I do think that they will ultimately see the playoffs this year. I do. I think this team is pretty darn good, and it's getting overlooked a lot.
Yeah, I had us finishing 1 game short of the playoffs when I did my win projections, which would be so heartbreaking. It would kill us. But to me, it's just hard to get past the Padres. And
Definitely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Dodgers. Well, obviously the Dodgers are winning their division, I think, and then the Padres. Maybe the Padres could win it, but then the Dodgers get a wild card, I think. But those two teams are pretty locked into the playoffs. Obviously, someone's got to win the NL Central. Wish we could be in that division and not the NL East. But I just think the NL East buzzsaw that we're going to have to go through in terms of scheduling is going to be so brutal.
It is.
But I will say this: the most important number here is the over/under on wins, 81.5.
Smash it. Absolutely destroy it. Because I will tell you what, the Phillies might not make the playoffs this year. And that will be because their division is ridiculously competitive. I mean, it is down to the Marlins. Every single team in that division is trying in some way to win. I mean, the Marlins at the trade deadline last year traded for Starling Marte. That does not happen unless they picture themselves, because his contract is up this year. That doesn't happen unless they picture themselves using him this next year, or they could flip him. But I mean, that doesn't happen. So every single team in this division is looking to compete. However, if you look at this Phillies roster and you don't think this team at least is going to win more games than they've lost, you're out of your mind. You're just being overtly negative, because it's a good team. It is a really good team. You look at this lineup; it's super deep. The rotation might not be what you wanted it to look like, going into free agency, but at worst, it's a carbon copy of what it was last year. Just replace Jake Arrieta with anything, a pile of rocks. It legitimately could. That would be more effective towards the Phillies' record than Jake Arrieta was. So. That's the worst case scenario with the rotation, right? And with the bullpen, it cannot get any worse. It cannot. They were historically terrible. The thought, even the slightest little inkling that might creep into your brain that says, oh, they didn't do that much to bolster the bullpen. It hasn't been that bad in like 100 years. So just think. Use your brain for a sec. I know it's a hard division. I know the National League is considerably harder than the American League. I know they lost the DH, but God, please just use your brain and look at the roster, stare at it for a good 3 minutes, and then tell me that this team won't win more than 81 games.
Yeah, I have them at 86. Do you have a guess?
That's what I have.
86?
That is exactly what I have.
We're on the same boat there. Yeah, yes, I think 86 is right around where they'll finish. And then right quick, Bryce Harper plus 1,500 to win MVP. Aaron Nolan plus 1,200 to win Cy Young. Do you think either of them have a chance to compete for this?
Just do it. Yes. If Bryce is a perennial MVP candidate and Aaron Nola is one of the best pitchers of the last 5 years, just do it. He was shorted of a Cy Young in 2018. You can just let. If any year is going to be it, it's going to be this one, because he was really, really good last year before, that September collapse, unfortunately. But that always seems to happen with these guys. We'll see if it continues. But, Aaron Nola is just one of the best pitchers in baseball. Period. End of story. So why wouldn't you put money on him winning Cy Young? Bryce Harper, perennial MVP candidate. There is never going to be a year in his career where he is not at least an inkling in the conversation for MVP. Put what? If you put $1 on it, you get 120 if they win it.
Yeah.
So what are you waiting for? Just
exactly.
Do it. The worst thing that happens is you lost a can of soda to Bryce Harper not winning MVP. So in my eyes, that's a no-brainer. That is an absolute no-brainer, especially if you have done the research. You really, really think that it's going to happen. You put $10 on it. Who cares?
All right, that was awesome, man. Thank you to Alex for coming on. We're hoping to do this more often throughout the Philly season to check in with Alex. You got anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I do, actually. So if you are a fan, I don't know what people are watching this on, YouTube, Twitch, whatever it might be, but if you are a fan of content creation, boy, do I have a surprise for you. I have recently, over the last month and a half, started creating my own content. I am now on Twitch at twitch.tv/takeabalk, TAKEABALK. You can follow me there. We are, over the first month and a half, it has been absolutely ludicrous how much support I've gotten, and that's very much thanks to, the people that follow me on Twitter that are way too kind to me. In fact, they are way too kind to me, way too supportive. And I plan to be doing it for a long, long time and hope to make it something that I could maybe do every day of my life. That would be pretty cool. So if you guys like that kind of thing, go drop a follow over there. If you can't find it on Twitch, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Alex Carr MLB. I'm sure you can see the little @ right there. And the link is, as always, in my bio if you want to drop a follow there. Thank you, sir, for having me on. I appreciate you.
Of course, man. I appreciate you. And if you're following me, if you're following this podcast, if you're a Phillies fan, if you're a Phillies sports fan, everyone needs to go give Alex Carr a follow, one of the best Phillies follows on Twitter. So thanks for coming on, Alex. Please go follow me at MarkHenry Jr. _ and please go follow at Tough Cover Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Follow at The Painted Lines on Twitter and subscribe to YouTube and Twitch. Thanks for coming on, guys, and enjoy opening day.
Let's go.